You're a failure.
And that's okay. Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Alicia. And we're failures too.
We take a walk back through people's failures and relive the mistakes they made so we all can have more clarity in how to be a better human.
Welcome to the 2020 perspective where we make failure fun. On today's episode, our guest is a man who has made a profession out of making people laugh as an actor, writer, and comedian. You can catch him on his YouTube channel, Cigarette Sandwich, and I personally recommend Banksy Unmasked for an episode that will make you laugh out loud. So today our guest is walking us through his journey of becoming a chemical and biomolecular engineer who would describe his whole life plan as a fail, and we'll let him tell you the rest, which is clearly quite opposite of being a comedian, so this should be interesting. Welcome to the 2020 perspective, Charles Pettitt.
Thank you so much for having me. I just want to start off by saying that man is pretty generous. I feel like I'm not grown up yet, so I don't feel like a man. So thank you for that.
I think we all still feel like kids.
Yeah, a little Peter Pan.
Yeah, well, I think I'm one of the Lost Boys, to be honest. I don't even think I'm a lead. So let me start off at the beginning here. So my high school scores were very high in math. And so I actually got a scholarship to go to Texas A&M University to be in their petroleum engineering department. Mm-hmm. And I went to go visit actually because I got dumped at prom. Basically right before prom, I got dumped. And my date was like, so we're still going to prom, right? Even though we're not together. And I was like, actually, no, I got to visit colleges that weekend. Sorry. I was like, my dad made me do it. It's like totally like spur of the moment. And then I called my dad and I was like begging him. I was like, Dad, please let me visit college, please. And he's like, yes, I've been telling you to do this whole time. Like, you're an idiot. So we went down to College Station to visit Texas A&M, which is my number one choice. I walked around campus. I walked in the student union. I walked into the petroleum engineering department and all of it. And I was like, this is the number one petroleum engineering program of the country. Like, I'm here, I'm going to do it. And it was all just not me. Like, you can't walk on the grass outside the student union. You can't wear a hat inside. And it's out of respect. And I supported the troops. I'm not saying that I don't, but I just was like, this is not like, I want to see some flip flops and some hippies and throwing a Frisbee. Like, this is not that school. I went to the best restaurant in town, Outback Steakhouse, and I was like, what the hell am I doing here? Watching this bar fight between these two guys that are like slamming around like Coors Lights, which I was like, I drink that and I'm 18. Like, these guys are like scrubs. So I basically, when I was in College Station at the Hilton Garden Inn, I called my friends and they were like, dude, you should come to Georgia Tech with us. And I was like, okay. So I filled out my housing application in Texas to go to college in Atlanta. I showed up. I did very poorly in my studies. There's like a few classes I was doing very well at, but the ones that were on my like chemical and biomolecular engineering track, which is the closest thing they had to petroleum engineering at Georgia Tech, my chemical processes class, everything, like my physics, my computer science, I was like really doing bad, to the point where when I came home for Christmas or winter break or holiday break or whatever during my sophomore year, I was not sure if I was going to fail out of school or not. I had to have a 1.80 to stay in college. And I was like, you know what? This is my shot. Like, either it's like I've studied hard on all my tests and I did my best, but I had a long talk with my parents and I was like, hey, like, just so you know, so this isn't a surprise, I'm probably going to fail out of school. Like, I don't think I did very well in my calculus test. I don't think I did very well in my computer science final. I may not be a college graduate. I may not be an engineer. I might have to move home. And that conversation went really well, I got to tell you. I'm being facetious. But basically, my parents were like, okay, like, if you do that, like, you get a month here and you got to get a job and then you'll have to find your own place, like, type thing. And so I was like, okay, like, yeah. So I was waiting.
Why do you? So sorry to interrupt, but
of course.
Why do you think it wasn't going so well at school? I thought you said you were kind of a smoke show with academics.
I was very good at math and I was very good at chemistry. Physics and the MATLAB that it was required to take, like, were two languages I just really didn't understand. And what I've learned from it is that if I really go back and look at where I was whenever I was in school, I really didn't want to be an engineer. Like, if I wanted to learn, if I really wanted to, I would have done whatever it took. You know what I mean? I would have tried again. And like, I was just not that interested in it because I was like kind of realizing what that life actually is, which is like, you're doing arithmetic, problem solving. It's not a lot of face-to-face. I mean, as an engineer, you really don't talk to people a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be quite honest. And if there's any engineers listening to this podcast, I think they would agree. Engineers are absolutely the hardest people to work with because they think they know everything. And if you ask an engineer, they would tell you they actually do know everything. So
I'm laughing because I work my new organization. I work with all engineers, and I've never in my life had like an issue connecting with people. Mm-hmm. And I'm like learning an entire new language to be able to just relate and have a conversation with people.
Mm-hmm. And I completely understand that because those are the people that I went to college with. Those are like my friends at school. And it's just very much like in engineering and problem solving for like, you know, civil and mechanical engineers, for electrical, a lot of ways, they look at a problem, they're like, I know how to fix this. And if not, I know 2 backup plans. But a lot of times when you're looking at maybe that hill to climb or that bridge to build, a lot of times it's not like, hey, we need to get this done right now. A lot of times in life, it's just kind of like, yeah, that's going to be a lot of work, huh? Okay. Well, let's see what we got to do next. Instead, it's like the engineer takes the point of just like, get out of my way. Everyone's slowing me down. Like, move. Like, I know how to fix this faster than you or something. So I was just kind of realizing that's not who I am and also not where I was fitting in. And the long and short of it is I ended up getting a 1.84.
Hey, you made it.
When I got my grades back, and so I was like, okay, I did it. I literally, I had my computer outside. I was sitting in my dad's neighborhood on his patio, and I threw on one sock, sweatpants, and a t-shirt, and it was like 45 degrees or something like that. It was wintertime in the South, so it wasn't super cold, but it was chilly, and I sprinted around his neighborhood and screamed at the top of my lungs, literally like I had won the war. Like, I was like a true psychopath. I mean, it was like, I'm sure people were like calling the cops on me at that point. But when I got back to the house, my dad was just like, okay, you got one more shot. You got lucky. You know, he was basically like, you got real lucky you didn't screw up your life. So I was like, okay, I want to do this. I really want to try. I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to do this. And so for the next semester, I like hired tutors and I like got friends to like work on homework with me. And I was like, really gave it my all and tried and studied. I didn't do anything fun. I like was there to do my job as a student. And I still got C's. So I was like, all right, I don't know what to do anymore. I applied and somehow got into this opportunity to study abroad. And by that, I mean Europe. I'm not like a, chauvinist piece of shit, but I studied in Europe and I went to the University of Oxford and I got to like do this amazing program. And we studied European composers, art and architecture. I'm seeing the world. I'm like outside of my like southeastern United States bubble of Tennessee and Georgia and Louisiana, where I was from. And so I was like exposed to so many different things. And I kind of had this wild night. I'll give you the very short version of it. my last night on the travel portion of our trip was in Paris. I ended up hanging out with some of my friends outside of the Eiffel Tower. We walked around the picnic blankets and heard American voices. So we sat down. There were these like fashion school, girls from, LA. And so we were like entranced. We were like, oh my God, so great to hear an American voice. We ended up partying with them all night long. And I woke up getting picked up off getting picked up off the street by 4 French police. And I was in the middle of losing like 60 pounds. So I was like, I'm fully changing at this point. So like, I'm dancing my way.
Physically and mentally.
Truly, I'm dancing my way across Europe. And I'm at the club every night. I'm like the worst person in the world. And I'm literally like getting picked off the ground by these cops, and I'm like losing my mind. They end up taking me to the hospital. None of them want to speak English. All of them do. None of them want to speak English to me, and they're only speaking French. And I kept being like, comme si, comme ça. Like I only know like what Muzzy taught me from French. So I'm like screaming, and I'm like losing my mind. They finally like basically take me back. I'm in a holding cell, and they, realizing I'm American, they don't even like charge me with anything. I was just in the drunk tank for the night, and they like had to take me to the hospital. And I like sat next to a man bleeding on himself in a gurney. And like, to my credit, I like was still pretty optimistic. Like I was like, maybe it's just that I'm just like a overly confident white man, the first ever that has ever existed. And I was like, you know what? So I basically I was just like trying to connect and like trying to talk to like one of the police officers. And I was just like, hey, do you know English? She was like, yes. And I was like, okay, you could have talked to me this whole time. Cool. Do you know any movies? Do you know American movies? She was like, yeah, of course. I was like, do you know the actress Julia Roberts? And she was like, yeah, of course. Yeah, Julia Roberts. I'm like, you look just like Julia Roberts. And she was like, honestly, laughing at me, but like the flirting was kind of working. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I could not believe that it worked for me.
Did she look anything like Julia Roberts?
Absolutely not. No, she was a police officer. She was like, she looked probably more like Ronda Rousey, like, if I'm being honest. But, and ended up, I had this wild experience, and I had to like basically max out 2 credit cards to get back to meet up with the bus that was like going through. Like the only ticket I could find to get me to meet up with my classmates was a first class bullet train from Paris to London. And so I was like,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
The most hungover I've ever been? All right, cool. Yeah, let's charge it to the game, I guess. And so I ended up telling a version of the story, obviously the much longer and much more. I took a lot
salacious?
More. Yeah, salacious and a lot more. I took a lot more wills. Took a lot more chances with the truth. I'll say that in this other version. And I'm saying this version of the story at this choir dinner when I'm back at Georgia Tech, and the president of the choir, whose name is Jillian Lewis, who works for NASA now. She's a fucking astronaut. Was turned to me and was like, "Oh my God, you're so funny. You should be a comedian." And I had like a pitcher of beer and a shot of tequila, like literally in my hands, and I like slammed them down, and I was like, "Oh my God, that is the first time that makes so much sense. Like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do whatever it takes." And when I like went to my my advisors, I was like, how can I get a degree from Georgia Tech as soon as possible? And they were basically like, well, you can't be an engineer because you don't have enough credits. And so I was like, fine. Tell me whatever I need to do to get a degree. I need to get something. And they told me, you can get a degree in business management and you can get out in 4 years. And I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get out of here as soon as possible. So I enrolled in marketing classes, and I I started taking improv class because I Googled, I'm like an oaf. I'm literally a man child. So I was like, Google, Chris Farley. Like, I was like, he's funny. Like, I'll do what he did. And so I Googled, he took improv classes at Second City. And I was like, okay, so I got to get on the Farley track. That's what I got to do. And at Second City Conservatory, they said you had to take a year of improv training. So I enrolled in a school in Atlanta that was across the street from campus. And they... basically at the time I'm like starting to do stand-up a little bit, and my first time on stage was when Hassan Minhaj was performing on campus, and I think he was doing like a clean show. He hosts a late night show for Netflix called The Patriot Act.
Okay.
And he was on The Daily Show as one of their correspondents, but he's got a bunch of stand-up specials as well. He was playing at Georgia Tech. There's like literally 25 kids in this audience for him, and I felt kind of bad. And so he was for sure doing a clean show, looking back as like someone who's been paid to do comedy. Like, he didn't swear at all, and not that he swears a lot, but he's pretty clean. But like, I think he had run out of all of his material, so he just started doing crowd work, and he's like walking up and down. He's like, what do you want to be, physicist? You're a nerd, like, you're dumb. Like, look at you, you're a stereotype or whatever. And then he, like, comes to me because, like, he literally worked his way down the line. And because, like, what do you want to be? And I'm like, I want to be a comedian. He's like, okay, really? Do you want to get up here and do, like, 5 minutes right now? And I was like, what? Like,
relieve me because I'm out of material.
I'm like, oh my God, this is what a dream. And I'm like, yeah. So I get up there and I tell my, like, 4 or 5 like half jokes, and he literally was just like, oh my God, like, you were so great, thank you, like, hey, next time I'm in Atlanta you should open for me. I was like, this is the first time I've been on stage. You're my hero now, thank you, like, oh my God, you've changed my life. I never heard back from him, but he was very nice, and that's one thing I really appreciate. He didn't have to be nice to me,
but he gave you some confidence there. I mean, he's like,
yes,
go do it, and you did it.
And literally, yeah, so when I was at the Improv Theater in Atlanta, they offered me an apprentice position to join to joining the cast, and that was the like validation I needed in Atlanta. I was like, okay, like, I can do this in Atlanta, so I can do this in Chicago. So
so you took a little bit of a risk, and it really paid off because you were kind of in the right place at the right time. When all of these other things with engineering you were putting all this effort into it, and it just wasn't happening. And here you have an open door, you take a little risk, and like more doors open for you.
And yes, and one of the craziest things that happened to me is as I started taking more and more improv classes, and got some more small successes here and there, and ended up getting lucky enough to work for the Second City. One of the things that they teach, and it's an improv tenet, so for improv comedy people who are listening to this, they're going to be like rolling their eyes, but it's something that came true for me in life, which is that in improv, there's no mistakes, there's only gifts, right? And they ask you to embrace the failure and the fear in the failure, because that's where you're going to find like real life moments, but also discovery and connection with people by doing something that's going to make you scared. And public speaking is the number one fear in the world, more than dying alone somehow. Because I'm a number one fear, dying alone. But
I'm right there with you.
I mean, it is what it is.
Everyone dies alone.
That's
embrace the void.
Exactly, that's why it's a fear. But I could walk up in front of a group of strangers. I have like so many psychos that come to me on the streets that are just like start talking to me. Like, I don't know if you have that, but somehow I think crazy people can see me and just like know that I'll respond. So like they just everybody just comes up to me and just like starts telling me their story. And I think that like for me the lesson of doing all the improv was just that like, oh, when I really look back on it, I'm like, I'm not full of regret that I didn't like go to USC, Southern Cal, or like NYU at Tisch or something, and like try and do like acting or whatever, like or just like give it all up in school and just do stand up. When I really think back on it, I'm like, oh, all those lessons that I learned were what got me to where I am today. So like I could not be where I am or have like done the things that I've done had I not done them exactly in the way that I did them. And rather than be regretful on like, oh, I didn't book that audition, or I didn't sell that TV pilot that I made. I look at those things and I'm like, okay, from my experience, I know that it's not the end of the world, and I know that I can learn from whatever I like screwed up on, and then we'll end up be able to like maybe not make that mistake again. And really it just came down to like, if I really thought about it, I'm like, I didn't want to be an engineer. I think I thought I had to be an engineer because I got math. But like, just because you're good at math and chemistry doesn't mean that you're like meant to be stuck in a lab for the rest of your life, which is where I was kind of looking down the barrel of being stuck in a like, fluorescent lit room and not talking to anyone. And I like to talk to people. So,
So I want to go back a second.
Yeah.
So that parallel you just drew right there, you were good at math, so you went in engineering, and then you didn't really, it sounds like you didn't get the validation that engineering was the right fit. But when you started doing the comedy route, you got this opportunity with Hassan Minhaj on campus, and then you got this positive feedback, which may have made it easier to then take the next challenge and take the next challenge. Do you think that you didn't get a lot of validation or support when you were pursuing engineering?
I definitely had support. I'm not going to say that I wasn't supported, because the people that helped me stay in college and like helped me build my grades back. I graduated 3.0, by the way. So
Nice.
I did
Well done.
very well rounding it out. But those people supported me and they did the best they could. But it's tough to slog through something where the best score is a 70 and then the curve goes up 30 points. Do you understand what I'm saying? So to have this and I think it's part of the conditioning of being an engineer, like you have to calculate risk and loss in such ways that are cold like that to be able to make decisions like, cool, we'll save 100 lives by destroying 2, or whatever it is, whatever the engineer paradox, metaphor you want to use is. But for me, I'm like, I look at that and think those people that can look at that and be like, hey, I got a 65 on the test, but after the curve, I got a 95. I'm like, that sucks. And like a lot of people that became successful at doing engineering were people that knew how to like memorize stuff, and grind, and they're very smart people, but also like they also know how to work by themselves really well. And I think I'm just better suited for group work. I think I'm great to be a member on a team. I think I'm in a lot of ways end up being a team leader, but I don't really like to sit down and be like, okay, I got to figure out one problem all day for the rest of the year, and that way I can increase efficiency by 3%. Like, that sounds like absolute, pure, unadulterated hell. That is not for me. And that's where I'm like, then thank God that I was not someone that was like engineer bust, because like I look back on that and I'm like, this saved me from a lifetime of being like stuck doing shit that I would hate until I like end up blowing my fucking brains out. That sounds terrible. Oh my God. And the people that can do it, more power to you. It takes all kinds. You gotta understand, I'm not disparaging the things that you're doing. If you're sitting there and you're a chemie, you're an Eaton, you're a double E or whatever, you're a compy, good for you. You're a civil, you're in industrial engineering. Oh my God, you're amazing. Petroleum, natural gas, that's amazing. What you can do is awesome. But guess what? You also cannot be a fucking doctor. You're an engineer. You can't be like a firefighter. We need all these people. Like, well, you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's got to do something. So I can't do your thing. Like, you probably can't do mine, and that's fine.
So what do you think you can extract, or like you can help other people extract from recognizing when you were not feeling energized, even though like you had in your mind, because you're like a goal-oriented person, I want to be an engineer and that's what I'm going for, and I'm going to do what I need to do to get there, but you slowly started recognizing that it wasn't right. How could you, like, if you could go back, what would you do to like amplify those moments of recognition that maybe you can help other people recreate so that they know that they're like going down the wrong path?
I mean, ultimately it is, and I'm trying to like condense this for you, but I mean, really the long and short of it is like, you have to come to the decision on your own. You need to ask for help. Asking for help does not make you weak. It makes you smart, because you know that you have a weakness, or you think you have a weakness, and someone can repair that insecurity for you. So if you're feeling like you can't do something, you should ask for help. And if you don't ask for help, or if like ultimately maybe you're someone who's looking at someone that's like failing in their thing, and they're like, oh my God, this person's like in this bad relationship, or this person's like in this job that sucks, or this person's like clearly miserable with their like their car or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like the dog keeps biting them. I don't know. Like you can do all you can to be like, hey, maybe if this isn't working, you should do something else. But they have to come to that decision on their own. Mm-hmm. And you cannot give someone that level of knowledge. Like truly, they have to make their own mistakes. So my advice to that person who's maybe like, I wish I had seen the red flags sooner, was like, you were seeing the red flags. You were probably lying to yourself about the red flags. Mm-hmm. What you need to do is be open to the idea that you do not know everything. You need to be open to the idea that maybe you could get something wrong, and you need to be skeptical about even yourself. Like, this is maybe a metaphor that's maybe more for mental health, but I think that it applies a lot to this situation for me, but also probably can be applied to a lot of things. And that's Zach Galifianakis, the Hangover star. He was in the Hangover movies, and he's done a bunch of stand-up shows, and he's in Baskets. And he's very funny, and he's a North Carolina College of the Arts guy. And he was doing some documentary footage thing somebody posted on either Funnier or YouTube or one of those things, and it's him like drunk or fucked up walking down some hallway. And they're like, Zach, like, what does that make you think in your mind? And Zach spun around in the middle of the hallway, and he stopped everyone. And he's like, can you really trust your mind? Can you really trust your own mind? And I don't think that is necessarily something that everyone should live their life by. But I think that it is enough skepticism to acknowledge that, like, you don't know everything. No one does. No one knows everything. So, like, acknowledge you could be wrong. And, like, once you've made that acknowledgement, like, oh, shit, maybe I was wrong. Start thinking about, like, how you can be right. Or how you can stop that feeling of being wrong from happening again. Mm-hmm. And put yourself in a position to be successful. Like, don't set yourself up for failure. Like, don't look at like let's call it your room in your house of undone chores. Like,
that's like my whole house.
Yeah. Well, right. So a lot of people have that. Like, some people even call it maybe it's just a junk drawer for the people that are OCD. Maybe they just have one drawer that's just like all the batteries live in there, and like random soy sauce packets and rubber bands that like are stretched out and aren't good anymore. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's got this
plastic
thing.
Forks.
Yes, chopsticks. Or
key to a thing you don't know what it is.
Yeah, like is it a battery or is this a case to something? I think that like acknowledge that like, hey, like that's fine to have that stuff. Eventually, it's got to get done, and so like create small goals for yourself. If you're someone that's like maybe super OCD, or maybe you're someone that's like, you're so busy and you're like, I just need to like scroll for a while and just like see what everyone in my echo chamber is saying on social. that's fine. Do that. Go for it. But also, like, be like, cool, I'm going to, like, make my coffee at home today. I'm going to open the junk drawer. I'm not going to sort it. I'm just going to open it and acknowledge that it's there. And I'm going to take one thing out and figure out what it is and where it goes. Set that up for yourself as a chart. Like, mark it off one by one if that's going to help you do it. Because, like, you can chip away at it. You absolutely have the power to, like, be the change you want to seek. So, like, do yourself a favor and, like, try and start at the bottom. Start at the bottom, work your way up. You don't need to fix everything in one day because you're gonna, like, explode. Don't do that. No one wants to see you explode.
I like what you're saying. It's a choice. Like, you have to make the choice that you want to, like, see something differently or make a step towards improvement, or even recognizing that you're not feeling energized or good about, like, present moment, whatever that is, if it's work or relationship or whatever. You have to make that choice and see it before you can even do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right. So that comes from being just acknowledging, like, oh, I'm in such a shitty mood today. Why am I in such a bad mood? Like, what is on my mind right now? And listen to yourself. Like, if your body's telling you to eat, like, you gotta eat. If you don't eat, you die. But if your body's telling you every time you eat, you feel bad, eat something else. Eat something smaller.
Do you have any techniques to kind of listen to yourself a little bit more closely, or be more attuned to it? Because I know that, I lead my life day to day. I'm not very good at listening to the signals unless I do something like stop and interrupt the process. So do you have any kind of, like, techniques or tips or things that you do?
So, Dan, I'm not asking you out. Are you single?
No, but I do have a puppy.
Okay. I think, and
I've got a long-standing commitment going on.
Good for you. Good for you. Congrats. And why I'm asking you this is because your house looks a certain way right now. No judgment on the way it looks. Is that how your house would look if your mom came? Or if your grandmother came to visit you? That sounds
There's
like
probably some shit on the floor that would disappear just a little bit.
Okay, so you would clean one thing up. All right.
Yeah.
So I think that you need to treat yourself like you would treat a guest. You need to be nicer to yourself. So maybe one of those things is, like, if you're looking at your house and you're like, well, it's just me for the weekend. I don't care how many pizza boxes stack up in front of the door. Like, acknowledge that, like, that's something that, mom or grandma or, maybe the other parent in your life that's, a
little judgy.
Yeah, I think they would probably look at that. And I'm not saying you need to, like, be, like, toothbrush scrubbing every tile or whatever. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, like, hey, if you leave your house and you look at it and you come back and you're like, I'm back in this shithole again, do yourself a favor and, like, make it so that you would want to be at home. Like, make it so that, like, being at home is not a chore. Look at your demeanor when you, like, get out of your car. Notice what happens when you get to work. If you get to work every single day and you, like, have to cry before you go in, that is, like, not a situation you need to, like, exist in forever. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
That's exhausting. Like,
it is.
I mean, look, it basically, it's like, I'm not saying you're not allowed to cry on your way home, because I have a couple of jobs too, and I get it. But what I'm saying is like, if you haven't even shown up yet and you are having a full-blown, just like Billy Joel as loud as it can go, tears down, like dripping off your chin, like, you need to reevaluate maybe what you're doing at this job. Because my advice to you is that you've got one life. You don't get a do-over. So do the best you can, make the best of it, and, like, ask yourself, maybe my advice to you is this: write yourself a note. It doesn't have to be lipstick in the mirror, but you could like post it, either like word of affirmation on the mirror, be like, you got this, or put one on like right next to where you stand in the bathroom, that's like right next to your face, so that when you walk in, you'll see it right next to your face and be like, how are you, but how are you doing today? Because that is a question that we ask everyone in our lives every single day. We ask, how are you? Oh, what can I do? You know, how are you? Oh, good. Yeah. But you don't, how are you doing? No one listens. No one cares. No one wants to know how you're doing. No one really wants to know. Like, that's not an invitation. And also, like, social norms, that's not an invitation to just unload. Like, the person that hears that and is just like, oh, God, I mean, the tires, like, air are low in all my tires. My radiator is just so bad. And I got a growth. Can I show you? Like, that, no one wants to know that. You know what I mean? So, the person that will want to know that is someone that's in your support system. So reach out to your support system more, and be that for someone else too. Make sure you're giving that to yourself, but also make sure you're giving it to someone else so that someone can be there to help you be accountable.
All right, that's fair. Very fair. Good suggestion.
Yeah.
Alicia, do you have any other questions for our guest today?
No, I don't have any more questions. This was great. Thank you so much, Charles.
Of course. Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
This is really fun.
I did an interview for Money Magazine about doing improv, and used to be an aspiring engineer, so it's basically just a few bullet points of what we've discussed today, but pretty cool that I got into Money Magazine as a improv comedian. And right now I'm basically on social media. You can catch me on my social handles. You can watch my YouTube stuff if you're not in Los Angeles. You can see me every once in a while at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, and some of the other theaters around town. But cool.
Awesome. Well, Dan, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good. This is great. Thanks so much for your time. This is fun.
Yeah, no worries. You guys take it easy. Cali Live, yo.
Okay. Bye, Charles. All right. So let's talk about Charles.
Yes.
What were some of your main takeaways from his interview?
So I re-listened to his interview a few times, and really most recently, I was probably in the right headspace to hear exactly what he had to say. So, I've been going through a lot of kind of challenges, a lot of failures, and a lot of stress because I've been really holding myself to super high expectations. And re-listening to the conversation we had, hearing how he said, maybe you don't need to hate your life, and maybe you don't need to be everything, because it is exhausting. That maybe giving myself different types of goals, but also more moderate goals so that I don't burn myself out, that was exactly what I needed to hear basically 2 days ago.
Yeah. So I agree. I think we both, and lots of people do, put undue pressure on ourselves to perform, to be the best at everything, to like in Charles' situation, it was just this expectation, unsaid or said, I can't recall, that he was going to be an engineer. And his whole life, that was the plan. And so he got to school, and even though he was struggling and trying, it wasn't like he wasn't putting any effort forth. He was trying and he was working his butt off, and it still wasn't, he wasn't happy with that choice. It wasn't easy or fun, or didn't feel right for him. And so I think it's, we just put this pressure on ourselves that we have to do something because we've set our mind out to do it. But a lot of times the transformation happens in a way that we don't necessarily plan for. We have to be the ones that are open to the what could be along the journey, even when it's not what we had imagined or projected ourselves in doing in the first place.
Yeah, the projection is huge. There's so many expectations that I set for myself, or that I've adopted from my parents, from society, from my friends, and not reaching those expectations makes me feel like a failure, even though there are many successes that have gotten me to wherever this failure allegedly is. There's so much success along the way. There's so much good stuff, and being open and listening to that has been, it's a life challenge. It's like everybody struggles with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Swags.
Swag.
Small wins equal great success.
Swags. That's an ugly looking word.
It was the name of a cafe in my old building, and it was like all healthy food, and it, as you can imagine, it shut down. People were not into it.
Well, place name Swags.
But the message is true, is, we sometimes have these big lofty goals in mind, and we have to remember the little bite-sized pieces that we win in order to get to that goal. And it might not even be the goal that we're getting to. It might change, but we still have small successes along the way that we should stop and celebrate and recognize. And I think that we miss a big opportunity by not doing that. And that's when we feel weighted down and like, oh my God, I'm not getting to that finish line. But hey, like, don't forget all these little tiny finish lines over here that led you in a different direction.
Yeah.
Recognize those.
And the thing so I used to work as an academic coach, and Charles's story is unique because his story and the details and the journey, that's unique. But the overall thrust of it's pretty typical. Like, people, especially in college, they try one thing and then they realize partway through that it's not working out, and then they change. And that's what I think is universal about this, is there's always going to be change, and there's always going to be, you have these expectations of what you should live up to, and this is who you should be, and petrochemical engineering is exactly your life story. And maybe it's not, and that's okay, because it happens to everyone in some way.
Yeah. I think hearing his story and sharing it helps me recognize, like, I'm like what you're saying, I'm not alone in my feeling like a failure, or that I'm all the time questioning, am I doing the right thing with my life right now? Like, I think everyone questions that, unless you don't care and you're like, oh, I'm just doing this right now because it's like what I'm into. But if you really care about how you're spending your time and your life, then I think that you're going to have those moments where you question, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? And there are going to be times when you feel like you're absolutely not.
Preach. Yeah.
I think for Charles, I mean, when I listened back to that conversation, I laughed so hard thinking about him in the French jail and telling that police officer that she looks like Julia Roberts. And I'm like, okay, you got to have fun along the way. Like, when you hit the bumps and life doesn't exactly go according to plan, stop and smell the roses and think about what you're doing in the present, and how you can extract like celebration and fun, like humor and fun times in the moments of the, self-discovery and the bad times too.
Hallelujah, girl. Hallelujah. Thanks to No BS Brass Band for the Bang & Show music. Check them out at nobsbrass.com. And subscribe on your favorite podcast player, or follow us on Facebook to get the newest failures delivered right to your ears. And may your failures be spectacular.